Ladies and gentlemen, this fight is 3 rounds in the APFC Flyweight division, sponsored by Combat Corner. And now introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner, a mixed martial artist. He stands 5 feet 7 inches tall and officially weighed in 125.8 pounds. Coming in tonight with a record of 4 victories with 5 losses, and fighting out of Chicago, Illinois, Rami Sharabi. And across the cage, his opponent, fighting out of the red corner, a freestyle fighter. He stands 5 feet 4 inches tall and officially weighed in 126 pounds. Coming in tonight with a record of 3 wins with no losses, and fighting out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Alberto Fernandez. And your referee is Chris Claviter.
Chris Claviter, our third man inside the cage, making sure things remain copacetic as these flyweights get ready to lock horns. It's Sharabi versus Fernandez at APFC 16. Immediately taken in the center of the cage was Alberto Fernandez, and taking the first shot was Rami Sharabi.
Fernandez charging in like a bull, coming in behind that right hand, staying low, loading it up, and just pressuring Sharabi's back against the cage.
Now it's Sharabi that's, well, for a moment it was Sharabi that had turned the tide with that forward pressure as they both jockey for position against the fence. Both of them in that 50-50 over-under position. Oftentimes, it's the shorter striker the shorter fighter that's able to use that shoulder pressure there. That's the case here, maybe, as Fernandez momentarily secured the takedown.
What Fernandez did was solidified the head position. You saw when they were in that over-under, he's looking to put his forehead in the chin of Sharabi, which keeps Sharabi postured up. That way he can't gain dominance. He looked for that underarm spin, man. I was excited to see how that was going to end up, but both of these guys back to their feet here.
Early on as it may be, it does feel like Rami is maybe trying to download Alberto Fernandez early on. I mentioned what a polished striker it is. It's no surprise that he'd want to kind of download the situation before engaging himself.
Sharabi looking fluid in his movement on his feet. However, what I think he's taking one too many steps back. With a guy like Fernandez, that's where he wants to be, because he wants to get your back against that cage and he wants to take you down and lay some punishment on you. And now he's in a great place to do so with that double leg, now here landing in the guard of Sharabi.
For whatever it's worth, whenever I see that USA wrestling tattoo that we see on the calf of Fernandez, I tend to not to want to engage in any sort of grappling personally. But very much you see the wrestling acumen early on as Alberto Fernandez now takes the back of Rami Sharabi.
Textbook wrestling, textbook transitions by Fernandez. Got the takedown, transition to the back. Now Sharabi was able to get back to his feet. However, Fernandez looking confident as he lowers his guard and he moves forward, because he knows that if all else fails, he can get to the leg of Sharabi, who's not known to be a grappler.
With that being said, Sharabi making you eat your words there, my friend, as he secures the takedown. And it's now Sharabi delivering punishment from the top. It'll be interesting, David, to see if Fernandez makes it out, if they make it out of this first round. Alberto Fernandez is yet to see a second stanza, so it will be interesting to see how exactly that unfolds should we make it out of this first round.
He has to be careful, though. Fernandez looking to set up that arm bar as he switches his hips out. Even if he doesn't get it, he's going to be able to transition and possibly get out here. However, Sharabi is hanging tough in there, landing some strikes. This has been a back-and-forth round so far, Christian.
Sharabi unloading from the top as the first stanza comes to a close. And Alberto Fernandez looks to see the second round for the very first time in his embryonic mixed martial arts career. It really did feel like maybe Sharabi was downloading his opponent. One thing's for certain, he's definitely gotten those kinks out and he's ready to strike in the second round.
Right here we see Fernandez landing that beautiful double leg. you know, he didn't really have to change levels much. He was already in a nice slow stance coming in behind that big right hand. However, Sharabi was able to get the advantage here in the grappling sequence, and he did some damage of his own. You know, Fernandez was working off the bottom. Sharabi landed some strikes. These guys have been going back and forth like two cats in a phone booth, man. It's been hard to keep up with them.
It's pretty exciting when you think about, I intro this fight talking about the striking acumen of Rami Sharabi, and then we see a quick takedown from him. I was talking about the striking of Alberto Fernandez and the wrestling. Well, then we see him working some pretty good jiu-jitsu off his back. Just speaking to the levels of well-roundedness of these fighters, of these quote-unquote amateur fighters. Let's see what the second round holds.
I think both of these guys are testaments to the talent that APFC brings here, even at the amateur level.
Coming out the gates hot was Alberto Fernandez.
Beautiful counter 2-3 there by Sharabi as Fernandez jumps in with the teeth kick. Perhaps he'd fare better keeping those hands up.
It seems as if potentially the corner of Fernandez wanted him to get in the face of Sharabi as he is pressed forward from the beginning of this round.
Sharabi seems comfortable right now, just fading back and countering as Fernandez comes in with his head down. He's seen a lot more success in this round than he did with that strategy in the first round.
Well, now it's Sharabi working with the, I was going to say working for the takedown, but now looking for a head and arm throw there is Fernandez.
Fernandez going with the schoolyard head norm. We used to hate that back in the wrestling tournaments back in the day. You had guys who would just get off on doing that. However, as they got older, you know, you're not as successful with it as we're seeing right now with Fernandez. But Sharabi did a great job adjusting. Now he has Fernandez's back against the cage.
It's the taller fighter in Sharabi now looking to potentially secure a takedown, but locking in an arm-in guillotine and sitting back is Alberto Fernandez.
Fernandez jumping guillotine, using his left foot there to push off of the cage. It looked like it could have been tight there. However, in this second stanza of the fight, they're a little bit sweaty, you know, which makes moves like that a little more riskier.
But what that indeed tells me about Fernandez is he's more than happy to trust his jiu-jitsu, as the wrestler has now gone to his back twice in this fight. Here we see him working his way back up to his feet and hitting a beautiful switch there is Fernandez.
That was a nice peek out there by Fernandez. He seems comfortable fighting from anywhere. He's comfortable on the feet. He's comfortable winning on top in the grappling position. He's comfortable on his back. And Sharabi is also doing a great job of adjusting at every point here. It seems for everything that Fernandez does, Sharabi has an answer or two.
That's that experience we were talking about. Now the record may be 4-5, but all I see is a guy who's got his 10th fight underway right now as Rami Sharabi weathered an early storm and now threatening a rear naked choke.
Looks like that left arm is under the chin. However, it's not quite on the throat of the carotid there of Fernandez. So he's able to kind of post on that elbow and just take deep breaths. What he needs to do is get his back to the canvas right now. He's trying to get up. That's that stubbornness of a wrestler. We get on our back and we want to get up, and we give up our back sometimes, which isn't the best position to be. Right now, he needs to get to his back and get Sharabi off of his neck.
Well, if you take a look at Sharabi's left leg, he was using it laced inside the leg of Fernandez to disrupt the base. Again, just speaking to the experience as Sharabi unloads from mount. Absolutely putting an exclamation point on the second round there was Rami Sharabi.
Man, that was a back and forth round. I have to give that one to Sharabi. I think as we're going into this third round, if I'm judging, I think it's 1-1. We've seen a little bit of everything from all of these guys. Right here we have the replay. We saw Fernandez throw that head norm. We saw him jumping guillotines right there in the face of the former Bellator champion Sergio Pettis. Then we had Sharabi threatened Fernandez. Looked like it could have been over there for a second there, Christian, if you ask me. However, Fernandez was able to get his back to the canvas, but Sharabi just transitioned, landed some ground and pound, and I think that's going to give him that second round there, Christian.
Yeah, the toughness of Fernandez most certainly being on display in that second round. Now, I mentioned it once already. Fernandez has never seen a second round, so he's most certainly never seen a third. We will see if weathering that early storm and taking him into these deep waters will pay dividends for Rami Sharabi. Or will we see Fernandez pick up a second win in the third round?
if that second round was indicative of anything, it looks like the fight is swaying a little bit towards Sharabi. However, we know Fernandez has, a ton of tools, and he has power and pop, and he can finish this fight at any moment.
Immediately pressing forward, putting Sharabi on his heels is Fernandez.
It's almost as if Fernandez heard what I was saying there. He lands that big right hand and almost sits Sharabi down. I think if the cage wasn't behind him, this would be a different story right now. Sharabi back on his back foot, however, doing a great job countering and getting himself back into this fight.
And I wonder, David, if it's fair to assume that the corner of Fernandez let him know that this is anybody's fight, and if you want it, you got to go out there and take it.
Fernandez has been fighting with a fire since the first frame of this fight. It's kind of like fire and ice here. You have the coolness here of Sharabi. He spoke to that stoic approach that he had yesterday, and he's carrying it into the fight. He's comfortable being elusive. He's comfortable with the head movement. Then you got Fernandez coming in like a bull in a china shop, looking to put the lights out.
Absolutely, Rami Sharabi, maybe a man of not too many words, but clearly a man of many, many skills, as he's showing just how well-rounded he's become. But it's Fernandez, again, maybe catching that second win, pressing forward in the third round. Big shots against the fence landing for Alberto Fernandez, and now shooting in for the double leg is Fernandez.
Fernandez doing a great job landing some shots and getting back to his wrestling, where we've seen he has success here early on. However, once again, Sharabi has an answer. Just when you think you have all the answers, Sharabi changes the questions, and he's grappling Fernandez in certain points of this fight here.
Yeah, coupled with that skill set is a bit of shiftiness for Rami Sharabi, as he's able to kind of just constantly be on the, whatever Fernandez throws at him, it kind of seems like, to your point, Sharabi has just got that answer. He's been there, he's done that. Again, this is his 10th fight already to Fernandez's 4th.
With that being said, 60 seconds left here in the third round. This has been a highly contested fight. Someone has to separate themselves here if they want to consider a victory here tonight.
Well, it feels like these two may be content to slug it out. And these 40 seconds may be very telling as to who our victor will be, as Rami Sharabi and Alberto Fernandez have squared off in an incredibly evenly contested matchup here.
I'll tell you what, the saying is styles make fights, but also personalities. I think that's been the story of this fight. Both of these guys' personalities, like I said earlier, Sharabi being calm, cool, collected, and looking for openings as he sneaks in that rear naked choke, Christian.
And it was a failed throw by Fernandez that led to giving up his back. Sharabi sinks in the rear naked choke and pulls off a buzzer beater as Rami Sharabi picks up his 3rd straight victory, putting away Alberto Fernandez. I'm going to have to get the official time, but that may have been 2 minutes and 59 seconds of the 3rd and final round, as Rami Sharabi takes home another rear naked choke victory.
You want to talk about clutch in a fight that was anybody's fight leading up to that point. Sharabi looked for his opening, he saw it, and he capitalized with possibly not even a second left, Christian. We got to get the word on what that finish was.
You said it was going to go down to the last 60 seconds. I said the last 40. We were both completely wrong, as it all went down in the last 10 seconds. Unbelievable. On the feet, this was a war, David.
Here we have Fernandez just coming in hot, almost put Sharabi down. However, Sharabi is able to stay calm in the fire and lands some counter shots of his own. And right here, shades of Jillian Robinson, my girl, how she sneaks the corner, sneaks in that rear naked choke. No one's none the wiser, man. I've only seen one person do that, and that's the female with the most submission wins, and I believe flyweight UFC history, Sharabi. Man, I am impressed by his grit. I am impressed by his ability to deal with the heat, take punishment, and just look for a win and fight through and through.
Rami Sharabi sets this place ablaze. Let's kick it over to the voice of the APFC cage, Michael Hansen.
Ladies and gentlemen, our referee, Chris Cleveter, put an end to the fight. The official time, 2 minutes and 55 seconds of round number 3. Declaring your winner by submission via rear naked choke, Rami Sharabi.
Rami Sharabi evens out his record and picks up his 3rd straight submission victory.